98% of the pork grown in this country is in the industrial model. I think the modern consumer needs to understand how valuable these animals are, and they need to be raised in a way that's aligned with nature, that's not externalizing terrible costs to our environment. And it's just going to take...
Charles. Let's go.
It's been too long, gentlemen.
Don't like how long it's been.
It's been way too long. What have you been doing?
Just lathering the world, man. You know, trying to keep up with Scott and Adeline and my VPs and getting ready for Hack Your Health. We're just coming off a great weekend. Always good to be in Austin and spend some time with you two fine gentlemen. So thanks for having me back on.
Dude, this is episode number 3. So you came on in 2022, episode 46. That was the first time we actually got to meet. I think you and I did a quick phone call before.
That's right.
We had you on the podcast, the 3 of us.
That was when I was in the old farmhouse.
You were in the basement?
Yeah.
Or
it was an old farmhouse.
farmhouse.
1-bedroom farmhouse.
You were lard pilling us on all things skincare, lard, tallow. Then we had you on last year, episode 180, because we had Hack Your Health last year too.
Yep.
Now we've got you back in town and back on the podcast for episode number 3. It's pretty damn cool.
It's a joy to be here. So I think I'm number 3 or 4 on the list of triple plays for the Mafia Nation. So it's an honor.
And you have been more than generous to us in terms of making connections for us, for people that we've had on the podcast a bunch of times, like Joel Salatin.
That was a good rip y'all had.
Will Harris.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of these legends. So super appreciative of your support. You've just been nothing but generous to us. So you're the man.
Yeah, well, rising tides lift all boats, and I love surfing y'all's wake, man. It's been fun to watch y'all's trajectory, and y'all are just absolutely killing it, and Noble's doing really well, and so just good to get back together and chew the fat.
It's been a cool journey. Let's do a little pinch of face food before we chew the fat.
Let's not get too far out there.
So this is your unscented face food.
This was the signature product we brought out this year. A little goes a long way.
Little hang time here, Charles.
Oh yeah,
little density.
yeah.
Look at that.
That's the leaf lard doing all the talking there.
So what am I looking at here?
So you're looking at just 4 ingredients: leaf lard, tallow, and a little dash of honey. And so,
so the unscented flavor has honey in it too?
Yep, everything's got a little bit of honey. I've actually lightened. That's so
Get it
nice.
in fresh.
I loved your
Get it in
comment.
there.
I think it was Sunday, maybe Saturday or Sunday. Bell was doing all the interviews, and you were like, "Man, I can get like 0 sleep and look like damn it, but if I put a little face food on my face, everybody thinks I'm well rested."
Oh, it's so true. It's so true.
You got that glow.
When we met, Harry was living in Austin. I was still in San Diego. So right before you came on the podcast, you generously sent us a bunch of product. When you're super generous with product, anyone that knows you would agree with that. Beautiful little handwritten note in there. And I tried it for the first time because I'd only ever used tallow skincare. I'd never seen another brand besides you guys using lard. And you were telling us about, the similarities between pig's pH and human skin pH and all that kind of stuff. And I remember taking a nice little dollop of it and just throwing it on my skin. And I'm like, dude, the mic is uneven, but I was like, there's a glow that comes from this product. And even now, I'll sleep 4 or 5 hours and I'll just throw a little bit of face food on or skin food. And people are like, dude, you look like super well rested. What, you using an Oura ring, using an 8 sleep mattress? I'm like, no, dude, I've just got the power of the lard.
The lard is working miracles in your life. And
it really is.
You're like, I've gotten 4 hours of sleep and I just threw the lard on my face.
Yeah.
It's so true, though. I remember when we first got down to Austin, people would be like, you guys are like glowing. I'm like, it's this skin food we've been putting on our face.
It's great stuff. It's always fun to work these conferences because I had a great booth team this year, and it's not day 1, it's day 2. People come in and there's a bunch. I think there were probably 3 or 4 tallow vendors there this year, and we love tallow. We use a little bit in our product. It's any animal fat's always going to be better than the conventional junk in the skincare industry. But man, it's that second day when people come back and they've lived their life. They've washed their hands after going to the bathroom, taking a shower and all that, and they're still just absolutely glowing. And so it's a lot of fun.
What was your big takeaway from Hack Your Health?
Oh man, this year, biggest takeaway. Well, I had what's the equivalent of like Snoop Dogg asking you to smoke a joint. I was at the after party with Sean Baker on Friday night, and he cooked a bunch of people steaks, and that was fun. No, I would say it was the panel. It was the opening panel. It got off to such a great start. It was Sean, Philovadia. I'm trying to remember who else was up there.
Judy?
I think Judy was up there. I think Anthony Chafee was up there. Mm-hmm. It was a carnivore Q&A kind of thing. And I'll take credit for it, but Phil Avedi is the one that said it. I was like, what was your biggest takeaway? And he said, not one question about cholesterol and the lipid hypothesis. It was all, above board stuff. And so for me, that sort of signified that this movement, at large, I'm over here in skincare land, but just general metabolic health, we're making some progress. And so that was a big takeaway. And then, there were some new vendors in the space. This was they're moving it to Jacksonville or Tampa next year, which I'm excited about. But the quality of people there this year, I think the numbers were a little down relative to last year, but the quality of people at Hack Your Health this year was just outstanding.
Yeah. Your booth was bumping too. And we talk about this a lot. As founders, I think it's really important to pick a product that almost embodies you in a similar way. So, Noble, the nose to tail philosophy was big for us. And then obviously Farrow, you being the only regenerative lard-based skincare on the market, I feel like that really is an embodiment of you with your ranching background, how much you love pigs and love the power of the pig too. But those conferences are just such a good way to really connect with customers and get to learn your customer and understand the questions that they're actually asking with your product. And I think there's a tendency for founders in the D2C space to just think like, I can just run paid ads and I'm good to go. But if you get that opportunity to shake your customer's hand, and you learn so much. You learn the questions that they answer, the things that they care about. Because it's just so easy to be like, all right, well, I'm going to pay this amount of money for a booth, what I'm going to get in return. Mm-hmm. And not everything is quantifiable from that lens too. There's like serendipity from conferences that I think you have to lean into.
Well, yeah. And again, rising tides lift all boats. And so even collaborating and talking to some of the other vendors, I mean, everybody's there on a mission to improve health. And so not only the consumer connections, but also the practitioner connections. In terms of the brand and sort of who we got in front of this year, I would say probably highlighted by Karen Martell, Nat Needham, a number of women in the pre and post menopausal space in terms of just metabolic health and being your best self. And that highly aligns with skincare, obviously, but also having the ability. This is the first year I had one of the gals in the booth, Belle. She's amazing, but she's done really well with Instagram, and so watching her work her magic and just seeing how much that fed into just some of our reels and stuff. I don't know what the drop off in terms of content on Instagram is going to look like now that the weekend's over, but yeah, that was a big highlight. And then obviously we dined with the Podfather and the Keeper last night, which is becoming an annual tradition.
It's special too. I mean,
yeah,
that we met them down at. Did you meet them in White Oak too?
Yes,
that was your first time meeting them as well.
Yeah. Well, we met Adam.
Yes,
Tina stayed in Texas. He came down, and old Slim got us all together down at White Oak that was September or October, coming up on 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was September 2 years ago.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. I remember seeing him talking about value for value and just being drawn to the way that he thinks, like such a unique thinker. And then I didn't really know who Adam Curry was at that point. Like I knew, but I didn't know now.
Yeah.
And then we've become friends, had him on the pod, did research before the pod, and I'm like, this guy is just like the coolest dude of all time.
Well, and he's super plugged into everything. Just, you know, he and John on the No Agenda podcast, they're always poking every bear imaginable. And so he's a wealth of knowledge and just a great dude. Yeah, I agree, Harry. That value for value talk, I still think about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a valuable ethos, you know, as a consumer brand. I think it's a valuable ethos to just embrace, because, you know, the value I want to give, y'all are doing the same thing at Noble. The value I want to give my customer is this is the cleanest, you know, again, nose to tail. We're not wasting any of the animal. We're trying to source it from, you know, reputable locations. But, you know, when you get my product, it's of the highest quality and also highly effective. You know, it doesn't matter if the quality's good if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so, and man, y'all's chocolate. You slept in this morning. We didn't get a chance to make our magic coffee. I know it was a long night. It was a long night, but we had water buffalo ice cream, so it can't be that bad.
God, Oro Bianco, 16% fat in that buffalo milk gelato.
Crazy.
It's divine. We got the peanut butter, stracciatella. What else did we get? Vanilla?
We got lemon sorbet. We got vanilla.
Was there mocha?
There was a mocha. There was a cherry. We ran up a tab, but it was worth every penny.
Yeah. I find that some of our favorite memories the last couple of years are honestly just dinners like we had last night, where someone makes a really good meal, great conversation. I think everyone at the table was talking. I feel like cooking has been a big part of your life too. Some people don't realize this, but you've written multiple cookbooks, including the recipe portion of Rob Wolf's book, Wired to Eat. Where did that passion for food come from? I don't think we've ever asked you that before on the podcast.
Candidly, Boy Scouts.
Yeah?
Yeah. I say Boy Scouts, and, you know, I was blessed to have a stay-at-home mom growing up, and so I joke with people. I spent about half my youth, if I wasn't playing sports, I was in my dad's workshop or mom's kitchen. And so I've also got it's suitable for Farrow because we handcraft everything. But if my hands are busy, my brain's kind of calm. And so cooking's a really good outlet for that. And we Julie and I published our first book in 2010, Paleo Comfort Foods, and we were pushed into doing that by Rob. And it was a cool journey. And when Rob's Wired to Eat book came around, he reached out and he's like, "Man, I'd love for you guys to do the recipes." And that was a joy. It's a great book. We were talking, I think, yesterday about the 7-day carb test, and just sort of, now that CGMs are so common, that feels like a little bit easier tasks to complete. But yeah, it was I would say Boy Scouts. I was fortunate enough. My dad was was the scoutmaster for our local troop, and so you can't go into Boy Scouts until you're 12. But I was like 10 years old, and he'd drag me along on trips. But yeah, you go out and you camp for 3, 4, 5 days. You hike in, you cook, and so I would say that was probably where it started. And then, out of college, I was sort of I just like cooking, and y'all know this. I mean, we've had some great meals at some amazing restaurants here, but whether it was the steak that Sean Baker cooked on Friday night, or just or the burgers and brats we had those brats, by the way, at the Curry's last night were sick. Like
ridiculous.
Little cheese in there, like cheddar brats. But yeah, I mean, there's a part of eating connected to just community and just being there with people. And, restaurants are great, but they're loud. And so just being able to just settle in for the evening and partake in sort of the whole experience is great.
Well, how much of that are we missing in today's culture? Just, I think about what we did in the backyard for the barbecue.
You
just
guys crushed that, by the way.
Food and people.
Yeah. Well, we're missing it. I mean, it's a piece, we've been they've been pounding into our heads for 60 years. It's hard to eat healthy, or convenience. And so, the average consumer, guilty as charged, the average consumer, chases convenience. And it's not that that's not important, but there's it's just like the externalized costs and sort of the industrial food system. There's some externalized costs to outsourcing the entire process of food preparation and ingredient selection and things of that nature. And, candidly, the best foods I've ever eaten had arguably the fewest ingredients, and you can pronounce them all. And so, yeah, I think it's not that we're missing it. I think it's on the rise, though. Just the ability to share a meal. And, I've been sort of carnivore adjacent or carnivore for a couple of years, and I have, even in my tightest paleo days, I don't think I've ever enjoyed eating so much as I do now. And so, for the listeners that are out there, it's low hanging fruit, man. Just throw a steak on the grill, or grill up some burgers, and teach your kids to do it.
Ned's back.
Ned's back. The man,
freshly showered. Yeah, I think that to your point, this whole process of reclaiming your health, it should be a really enjoyable, fun experience. And I think as we've evolved over time with the podcast, what we've kind of deduced our whole thing down to is like, if you can just prioritize foods that are made by God, and you're cooking those meals and you're sharing those meals with people that you love and you care about, you're going to be in such a good spot too. And a lot of times with these, I would encourage anyone for people to start throwing dinner parties. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. It could be, like you said, burgers on the grill, a couple cheap cuts of steak, set out some plates for people, nice little round table, tell everyone to throw their phones in the middle of the table or leave it in the car, and you'll have some of the best conversations and connections you've ever had. And you'll also get really healthy and eat delicious food in the process. It's like you're kind of checking all three boxes doing that.
Sure. Well, and the coolest thing about what Noble's doing is y'all sort of given people that middle ground. So you've got a convenient choice for folks in a pinch, but it's still based in sort of real ingredients, foods made by God. And so, I love that little wedge that y'all are pushing into that space between convenience and just full on ownership of the dinner plate. And so, and again, if my protein intake for the day is not where I need it to be, it's a couple scoops later, and God, raw milk. Your chocolate mixed with raw milk, I do like a scoop and a half per pint. So it's more like a chocolate mousse by the time I'm done with it, but it's delicious.
Dude, you can get a little cream in there too, and you can make it almost like as thick as a milkshake that you would give. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Stop.
A little egg yolk in there.
That's a new one you've added to my lexicon of Noble exploits. I will try that when I get home.
Yeah. For anyone listening who needs the rundown on how to use Noble, it's this simple: 2 scoops, raw milk, glass of raw milk, egg yolks, potentially 2 egg yolks. Mix it up in a blender. That thing will be so frothy. I think that's probably 50, 60 grams of protein or more. No, way more.
More.
Yeah.
With the raw milk and the
Like
yolks.
100 grams of protein.
Close to 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you going to beat that?
You can't. Well, the cool thing about Noble too is you can kind of customize it to your goals. So like right now I'm trying to cut a little bit. So what I'll do is 1 to 2 scoops of the chocolate. So each scoop only has 85 calories, some ice, some mineral water, and then to still kind of get that creaminess, because a lot of people don't like the taste of just protein powder and water. You throw those 2 egg yolks in, so that adds the creaminess and the protein and the minerals too, and it froths it up a little bit. And then I'll just do like a tiny little splash of heavy cream. So that shake is still only like 300 calories, but so many good nutrients. And you like Harry was saying, you get 50, 60 grams of protein in there too, but you're cutting while you're drinking that.
Well, and you're goosing the fat.
Fat
with those yolks. Yeah, that's what we need to do. So you save your whites, and then you use a little Noble, and you make some chocolate Noble meringues.
Ooh.
I'll be back next week.
We need you back.
Figure it out.
We need you back here full time.
We wish you lived in Austin full time.
Well, if I could get my VPs over here, we might make the run, but that's not reality. We got to do a trip to Charleston to see Ray.
Oh yeah, that's a must.
And Dana's sister's down there too. Is that right?
Yeah, her sister Kirsten is out in Charleston, and then Harry's older brother lives with his younger brother.
Oh man,
the whole squad's down there.
The whole squad.
Yeah, you're making me think of Bastrop.
the red light room. That was some fun times, man. That was a good setup, Anthony. We miss you. That was the second time we hung out, right? Because it was post beef initiative.
White Oak, the conference we did at White Oak was the
White
first
Oak,
time.
and then Bastrop, and then KetoCon.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Hack Your Health. It's been a year, has it? No, it hadn't been a year.
It's been over a year.
Over a year.
Because Hack Your Health last year was April.
The virtual world throws me off now. I can't remember when I last pressed palms with you guys, but yeah.
I sound like a broken record, and Harry and I talk about this all the time on the show, but you really can make some of the best friends of your life on social media if you lean into it too, because if you're in the same algorithm on Instagram and Twitter, you have a similar philosophy about the world, health in general. And I would just encourage anyone, if there's people that you're connecting with on Twitter, it's like take calls with them, try and meet up with them in person, because we're such close friends, and that was all facilitated off of social media. And now it's like our brands are growing together. We're good friends. Like, it's just a special thing.
So funny. So again, some great connections out of the event this weekend. And like my second message after "great to meet you" is like, send me your cell. Yeah. Because I like to move people over. I'm old school. It's like, if you need me, text me. I think we were talking yesterday, and somebody said, if you've got a problem with me, call me. If you don't have my number, then you don't have a problem with me.
Yeah.
And I think it was Pastor Jimmy that said that yesterday at dinner. Am I right?
I don't know if I heard him say that.
Yeah. So we got to meet Jimmy and Annette last night too. That was a real treat. That dude's jacked.
He's jacked. Yeah, so Pastor Jimmy and Annette, they're Adam Curry and his wife Tina's pastor out in Fredericksburg. And so they're 60, I think Pastor Jimmy is 62, and they've been carnivore for about a year. They're on like day 333 or something like that.
Yep.
And they've like transformed their health, and it's amazing to hear them talk about it. And then meeting Sean Baker this weekend, Chafee, Kiltz, these people that they've learned so much from, and then they get to bridge that gap and meet them in person. You see all these people that are hitting 60 years old, and it's like, I've got 20 years left. I'm just going to decline and fizzle out. When they're like, no, man, we want to build this church, and we feel great. We've lost 20 pounds. Our energy is amazing. Pastor Jimmy was saying that, as he's gotten his hormones into a better place, it's kind of given him that vim to preach stronger messages at church too. So it's so cool just to have those run-ins with people that have changed their lives by eating this particular way. And it makes you realize that there's this whole other version of yourself that's sitting out there, but until you change those habits, like, you're just going to let that version of yourself kind of just sit there and be dormant. I think the goal of all this is to bring that higher version of yourself into existence.
Yeah, he talked a lot last night about, I guess he took about a month off sabbatical, and the church is obviously always coming under fire, and he alluded to the energy and the strength he was pulling from, changing his diet and just improving his health, and that being one of the things that really lit the fire to, man, I got to get back in the pulpit and let it rip.
It was cool. I mean, you could see the effect of a guy who got his health. It sounded like he wasn't all that unhealthy to begin with, but said he lost 20 pounds, which is...
So did Annette.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
And then, got rid of some brain fog, but getting your health in order and having a purpose, I mean, that's like 95% of the battle.
I used to tell people back in the paleo sort of coaching days, like, if you wear glasses, it's anyone that wears contacts or glasses, it's a really good analogy. But, it's like that first time you put glasses on, you've walked around thinking, oh, this is what the world looks like. And then all of a sudden you slide those lenses on and you're like, oh my God, everything goes from so vague to just hyper granular. And it's no different with your health. You get to one place, one step at a time, for better or for worse. And the numbers don't lie. The metabolic health in this country and the obesity and it's it's very troubling. I do think we're turning a corner in many respects. Again, there was not a cholesterol question on the opening panel, and so I mean, it's obviously a lot of like-minded folks coming here, but that was the first time I've ever been to an event. I've been coming to Austin for over a decade for events like this and adjacent to it, and I think that's the first time I've ever been, spent all weekend and not heard about cholesterol in terms of its negative connotations, and so that's progress.
Yeah. I feel like people are, they've seen enough information where they're encouraged to speak for themselves. And it seems like, especially the body of people that were at Hack Your Health, I think they have that mindset of, my doctor works for me. They understand the different layers of metabolic health. And I think they're also realizing, okay, maybe my LDL went up a little bit, but if my waist size is getting smaller, which is my biggest indicator of my metabolic health, which is what Dr. Avadia talks about in his book, Stay Off My Operating Table, and all these other biomarkers are improving, then I think I'm good and I don't need to be concerned about cholesterol being the boogeyman. And I think you're just starting to see that spread and people starting to think for themselves, which is super encouraging. But one of the things I will say is that you gave a talk this weekend, How the Lard Works in Mysterious Ways.
Monumental.
I didn't get to go to it because I was sampling, but Harry came back and was like, dude, I think that was Charles's magnum opus.
It was good. It flowed really well. So we had right before the talk started, we had a little technical snafu. For whatever reason, my talk slides didn't come through, and the guy before me ran over a little bit, and so I've got this like tight window. So I've sprint. We were upstairs in the breakout room, and so there's like dead sprint down to grab my computer and come back up, and so I was loose as a goose by the time by the time things cranked up.
Well, I saw you come back down to get your laptop, and you were like, I got to get back up there. I'm looking at my watch, and you had 2 minutes to get back up there.
Oh, yeah.
So you turned around and run.
And the last event was letting out, and so there were like people. I was like, excuse me. Oh, my God. Bobbing and weaving. Hey, that's why you train, right? When you got 2 minutes to get downstairs to upstairs.
Yeah.
But, no, it went really well. Kept it really broad. We tried to touch on sort of three high-level tenets, sort of our history with pigs, arguably the first animal we domesticated for meat. And I never knew that. I did a lot of research for this. I've been over in farming land and Farrow land, but, just diving into some of the history, some high points like Galen, who was, if you don't know Galen, he was Marcus Aurelius's like concierge doctor. And in the mid 300s, publishes all this work and credits his ability to understand the anatomy of a pig to understanding the anatomy of a human, and so that was one of those, and so a little bit of the history, a little bit of the just the biological facts about lard and also the pig, and then some farming components too. It all ties together. And so, yeah, it was a good talk. The buzz around the booth after the talk was fantastic, and that stretched all the way into Sunday. We had a guy, I know you all will remember him, super jacked dude, bald guy, and young bald guy with psoriasis. And he came to the talk because he cooks a lot of pork. He's from New Orleans. Brandon, if you're out there, love you, man. And I was in and out of the booth. The girls managed the booth a lot over the weekend. And so I kept coming back to the booth, and they kept saying, man, there's a guy walking around with psoriasis, and like it's gone. Like he started using it on Friday, and here it is Saturday afternoon, and he came back and was like, it's gone. And I was like, who is it? And anyway, we ended up on Sunday finally talking, and I put two and two together, and, Bell got a video or two with him and chopped that up. But again, I'm sure you guys get some of this with Noble, but to have just that moment, that's the weekend, like check, we've crushed it. Here's one guy that's, fan for life and probably a customer for life, and also cooks a lot of pork in New Orleans. So we're going to try and leverage that into some fun.
Dude, that's the business.
That's
right?
it.
Like,
yeah.
So one life turning like that, now he no longer has to deal with the struggles of psoriasis, which, yeah, I'm sure it's brutal.
Well, I mean, one could argue that the pharmaceutical side of skincare is actually even more nefarious than the just general consumer side of skincare, because they're making it's a base cream, right? And so they're making it with the cheapest, nastiest, most preservative-laden ingredients, and then they're shipping that goop off to a compounding pharmacy and injecting, whatever steroid or topical, medications, to treat the whatever condition. And, that was a lot of the chats I had with like Karen Martell and Nat Nidham, and there was one more. I lathered Dr. Amy Horniman on Sunday. That was a hoot. But these are all women in sort of the pre-post menopausal world with hormone health, specifically around to women. And again, some of the medicated creams they're recommending are just noxious. I mean, the base cream, it'd be like wrapping your vitamins in a pile of dung before you swallowed them. It's like, okay, the vitamins are good, but the carrier not so nice. So anyway.
Yeah, it's like intuitively you think about the different levels of skincare that exist, and it's the same thing as food, because our skin really is treating skincare as if it is food, which I'm sure you'll expand on. But like, of course, an ingredient that God has made is going to be better than something synthetic for your skin.
Well, see what they've done in nutrition, with things that we eat. They put synthetic and plant-based proteins on the same level as animal-based proteins.
Yeah.
Well, we don't metabolize those things the same way. I think it was Beyond Meat that got in a ton of trouble. Was it 2 years ago for the labeling? They were saying, 19 grams of protein per serving, but you can only absorb 10. And so, skincare is no different. Skincare is like a hot button in skincare is like hyaluronic. I can never pronounce this one. Hyaluronic acid, that's a big one. Retinol is another big one. Retinol is vitamin A. Yeah. And do you want naturally occurring vitamin A that a pastured pig has metabolized from a healthy diet and environment and stored in its fat, or do you want some chemical synthetic that was derived in a lab somewhere? And there's not a double-blind placebo test to show this, but intuitively, one of those is better than the other. One of the tenets of the talk was we've just lost our intuition. Slim was the one that introduced us. His first event in Kerrville, right at 2 years ago at this point, Dr. Mary Kerr was there, and I'll never forget this. During her talk, she said, we're the only animal on the planet that has to have someone tell us what our intuitive diet is. And so we've just lost our intuition. One of my slides was a bunch of lard cans from like turn of the century. This is pre-refrigeration. This is pre-HVAC. And, this is pre-grocery store. You walk into your general store in whatever town you lived in, and there was a 100% chance you were walking out of that store with a can of lard. And, fast forward to today, and it's like, and even when I say lard, people assume tallow. Like they don't even have the differentiation. Not that there should be, but they are different. They come from different animals. I jokingly say, we're not a coconut, we're not a shea, and we're not an olive. These are fats. Prevalent real fats in the skincare industry, but we're also not a cow. I know we're not a pig either, but we're way more biologically similar to pigs than we are cows, which is why we lead with lard. Again, tallow's in our product, but tallow's actually we crafted a message this weekend. I think our product works well with tallow. So for your listeners out there that are on a tallow product, they're great. But tallow sits up on the surface of your skin a little bit, and there's a new concept in skincare called slugging, You heard of this one?
No.
So you put your quality. Yeah, I can see where you're going here.
Slug sauce.
Keep going, Charles.
you put your high quality skincare product on, whatever that is.
Where?
And you let it soak in, and then you cover your skin with like petroleum jelly or something that's not going to penetrate the skin. It's going to act more as a barrier, and so it's going to keep that moisture in. And so, I think that's a really good feature to sort of pair tallow with lard. Put the lard on, let your skin eat it because it recognizes it more readily. And then, once it's soaked in, if you've got a little tallow laying around, just glaze the top and you're done.
So Brett mentioned your presentation. You were talking about the slides with all the tubs of lard on it, which was incredible. The one thing that stood out to me was like this, just the way you told the history of lard. And you talked about this story about pigs going from like the Midwest up to Chicago, being herded up there. It was the craziest. I was like, I can't tell if this is real or not.
Dude, doing all this research. So everyone's idea of pigs today, even at a polyface type location, here's a fence. And, we've got electric fencing keeping things in. We still move them around and all that. But doing my research, so during the Civil War, the meatpacking industry relocated from Cincinnati to Chicago. The Confederate Army blockaded Cincinnati, and so the Union Army, in an effort to preserve their food supply, moved the meatpacking industry to Chicago. Also, at the time, most of the pigs were being raised on the East Coast, but the Corn Belt today was being developed, and one of the reasons pigs became way more prominent as a meat stuff for us was because they could thrive on corn, and of course the Corn Belt moved to Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, the Corn Belt, and so as we get closer to the late 1800s, early 20th century, a lot of the pig farming in the U.S. transitioned to that part of the world. And again, this is pre-electric fencing. The stat that blew my mind, I put up a slide. The University of Oklahoma has kept very detailed records of the pork industry in the state. And in 1920, there were 1.3 million hogs. Yes, 1.3 million hogs documented in the state of Oklahoma, and those hogs were on 130,000 farms. Now, to just bring that forward, today, or give or take today, there's about 2.2 million hogs in Oklahoma on 2,700 farms. So we've had almost 80% increase in the total number of hogs, but we've had 1,000% increase, tenfold decrease in the number of farms. But there were no fences. You would go harvest your cornfield. Every farm had hogs because you'd harvest your corn or your wheat or your whatever you were growing, and there would inherently be lots of grains that just weren't picked up in the harvesting process, and they would just go out and glean the fields. They're an omnivore just like us, so there's really nothing that goes to waste when you've got pigs. And when it came time to slaughter, this is what you were getting at, Harry. So we used to only be able to kill animals in mass, when it was cold. And so and pigs actually fit a very seasonal meat production scale because it takes about 8 months from birth to market weight. And so you raise the pigs up, birth them in the spring, raise them up through the fall, and when winter runs around, you herd them. They would herd them. No fences, no nothing. Like a shepherd.
Migrate them upwards.
They would migrate them from the Midwest Corn Belt to Chicago. At one time, Chicago and the meat packing industry in Chicago at the turn of the century was employing roughly about 45,000 people and was harvesting anywhere from 15 to 18 million animals a year. But the reality is they were harvesting the vast majority of those animals from November through March because it was cold enough you could slaughter the animal and hang it and it wouldn't spoil. And this is just trying to recontextualize, how significant the pig was. So pigs, just like humans, preferentially take caloric abundance and store it in their fat. We do the same thing, right? And so that subcutaneous fat acts as a real barrier to protect the meat in the curing process. Pigs are also unique in that you can what's called scald and scrape them. So you can heat the skin, post-mortem. You've taken this animal's life. It's time to eviscerate it. Well, before you take the carcass and cut it open, you can scald with hot water and you scrape the hair off. Well, that skin. One of the slides, you remember the slide with the ham?
Yes, I was going to ask about that next.
Yeah, so I had a bunch of excess pork. This is probably 2000. This would have been 2017, 18, and I had a bunch of extra pork, and it was time to go to the slaughterhouse, And so, rather than turning a lot of that into sausage to sell, I reserved, I think it was 8 hams. And so I took the pigs to a place that scalds and scraped the skins on, and I took those hams and went and had them cured and smoked. And fast forward 4 years later, this was 2018. So January 1st, 2022, we had a New Year's party, and I break one. This is a 4-year-old piece of meat, and we can't conceptualize the idea or the significance of being able to kill and cure a piece of meat now and keep it good, without refrigeration for years. And man, we cracked that thing open. I featured this, Brett. I know you weren't there. Featured this slide of this prosciutto ham, and but again, these are things that are unique to the pig. And the point I wanted to get across, there's a lot of this PUFA argument today about, and look, not all pigs and not all lard are created equal. But that's not the point. The point is you can raise a very healthy, very happy, one bad day, extremely nutritionally dense pig, and then you can preserve that, and of course, obviously, repurpose the fat for cooking, or for skincare, or for you remember the slide with all the textile uses?
Yes,
dude. Only thing you can't use on the pig is the squeal.
It's a great slide.
Crazy. We harvest over 20 hormones out of pigs to this day. This is the other thing. Like they're a modern day hero in terms of human health. We harvest over 20 hormones from pigs, and we use them directly in human bodies.
Really?
Oh yeah. One of the slides, so the medical slide,
pharmaceutical?
Oh yeah, for sure. Every EpiPen in this country, I don't think they're synthesizing epinephrine. Probably are, but we harvest epinephrine from pigs and use it in humans. The line in the talk was, I don't know what's more life-saving, an EpiPen or bacon, but they both come from the pig. So
it's close.
It's close. It's close. But anyway, it was a great talk, and we got a lot of great feedback. I haven't looked at the results. We did a little survey at the end because the goal is to try and sort of hammer down that talk to a more of a TED Talk domain, which I think is like 10, 12, 15 minutes, something like that. Because I think the modern consumer needs to understand how valuable these animals are, and they need to be raised in a way that's aligned with nature, that's not externalizing, terrible costs to our environment, manure lagoons and things of that nature. And we're a long way from it. 98% of the pork grown in this country is in the industrial model. But, if we can get that 98 to 95, 5% seems to be a critical benchmark. And it's just going to take consumers demanding higher quality and asking their store to carry products. And hopefully over time, more people are willing to live a lifestyle that aligns with agriculture. You two did a great job on the regenerative ag panel. But you remember our question? You remember the lady with the question?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
the question,
15-minute
Well,
question.
no, it was just one question
And a few statements.
with a preamble.
Yeah.
preamble about her Instagram page and all this fun stuff. But this is really funny. Like, do you remember her question? It's like, how do we get more farms back?
Yeah.
And it was like, nobody's stopping you from starting a farm. You don't need but a handful of acres. You could homestead, grow your own food. But she's convinced that it's someone else's responsibility to start a farm. Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I wonder why. Because obviously, cows and beef consumption has been bastardized by the mainstream media, but I feel like a lot of people don't talk about this, but pork and pigs have been bastardized on another level too. Like even certain people, when you tell them you're using a lard-based skincare, it almost like signifies a negative emotion where people think about pigs as these like dirty, unclean animals, but you're saying that they're actually they're a miracle created by God that have all these incredible nutrients in them, all these different vitamins. It can be incredibly sustainable where you're slaughtering an animal 4 years ago and you can still use it, in the future. But it's interesting how much more bastardized pigs are than beef.
Well, the pig's been, I would say, from a cartoon standpoint, has been, this idea of like, what's the damn pig in Charlotte's Web? Wilbur. We've got Porky Pig over here. We've got Wilbur over here. You don't see a lot of cows making the main stage. And so they've sort of been protected. And I went into this on the talk. Lard was the first. Everything in the world was made out of tallow and lard at one point. Like it was an animal fat based world. It was the meat packing industry's consolidation in Chicago that led to price fixing of lard and tallow, which led to Procter & Gamble seeking out cheaper alternatives to make soap and candles. And so this is how cottonseed oil's ubiquity sort of came to light. But yeah, we made everything out of lard. But Crisco, lard was the first one to get picked on. And candidly, again, if you walked in that general store in 1905 to get your nails and your sugar and your flour, there's 100% chance you walked out with a can of lard, which is white. And so when Crisco came along in 1911, they hydrogenated cottonseed oil and they bleached it white. And so that was the first cooking oil. We hardly ever cooked with tallow. In fact, I got a lot of questions this weekend about, well, why did McDonald's choose to cook with tallow? So you got to think about this. So you kill a beef carcass. That animal weighs 1,500 to 2,000 pounds. If you're in a homestead situation, like what the hell are you going to do with that? Mm-hmm. Like you and your 3 sons aren't just going to drag a 1,500 pound dead carcass around. So we used to eat a lot more pork. You milked the cow, you bred the pig, and you'd eat pork. And hunted deer and things of that nature. But we used to eat a ton of pork. But God, where was I going with that? Yeah. So everything. So tallow was for soap and candles. It's you guys know this. It's solid at room temperature. So in a culinary setting, I need a half a cup. Well, measure out a half a cup of tallow. You're like digging it out and trying to. Lard's just soupy. Like you can just bring it on out, and it's got a really high smoke point. And most of the pigs bred in this country, we've only got 3 lard breeds left. I think Choctaw, Guinea, and large black hogs are the last 3 sort of lard specific breeds left over from.
What does that mean?
So pigs, just like any other animal, have a phenotype, right? So you've got torpedo-looking pigs, so long and narrow, and then you've got sort of the fatter. Think torpedo versus gallon drum, like a drum, and so pigs would be bred based on what you were going to be using them for. So if we wanted to make lard, then we would preferentially raise a Choctaw or a Guinea hog because they're going to yield more lard per pound of body weight than another breed. And so today you see 3 heritage breeds reminiscent of the days when we were growing a lot more pigs for lard. All the pigs today are grown for meat. And so now the phenotype differentiator is, are you a bacon maker or are you a ham maker? And so we've transitioned from lard to selectively, again, I mentioned like the large blacks or even a mule foot. They're a long-bellied animal. Smaller hams, but really long bellies. Well, if I'm in the business of making bacon, I want a nice, big, long belly. And so the phenotype and what we're selecting for with pigs has really evolved over time, and candidly should have. But the point, Brett, is we used to eat a way more fresh and cured pork. Beef was too big. And so along comes refrigeration and mechanization. Now we have the ability to kill this larger animal, handle it, and keep it from spoiling. And so one of the reasons I believe McDonald's, and this is a hypothesis, but to me it makes sense, is post-World War II, we've got all this mechanization and refrigeration has become reliable. Now the beef industry as an industry is really able to grow. And then you get chicken industry. Pork hit a low point in 1987, which is coincidentally the year the Pork the Other White Meat campaign hit. But so the beef industry expands at the same time that the synthetic oil and petroleum derivatives and seed oils, that industry is expanding. And so there was no use for tallow in the textile world because we'd replaced a lot of that with some of these, glorified motor oils and whatnot. So I believe the reason McDonald's used tallow is because it was cheap. It was a throwaway product. Now, by the time they abandoned that in the early 90s, you've got a couple of compounding factors. You've got the lipid hypothesis and saturated fat's going to kill you, but then also we've gotten really good at making cheap oil, like cheap seed oils and peanut oils and some of these other things that are arguably just as nefarious in our diet and wrecking us. And so, yeah, lard was lost. Lard got lost. The nail in the coffin for lard was World War II, and we rationed lard. You remember why?
I don't remember.
It wasn't because we eat it. It's because you can't make nitroglycerin out of cottonseed oil. And of course, the fun line in my talk was pigs are the bomb, right? But that was the reality of, it was for the war effort. You can't make explosives out of lard is the most efficacious fat. Of course, all of that stuff's synthetic now. But at the time, if everybody remembers Fight Club, they're raiding the dumpsters outside of liposuction clinics because monogastric omnivore fat is the best thing in the world to make explosives out of. And so that was the nail in the coffin. It was like, you can't get your lard at the store because we're rationing, but hey, here's your can of Crisco. And lard never recovered from that until now.
That's why understanding history is so important, because when you realize the founding story of Crisco and realizing they were trying to create something that would mirror lard, it's never going to be as good as the product on a pedestal, the original product, and it's always just trying to replicate that and do that in a very synthetic way. And then try baking something with Crisco versus lard. I don't know if anyone listening, there's a lot of people that haven't had baked goods or cooked anything with lard before. The Didue does a lot of stuff and pastries cooked in lard. It's unbelievable. And it's like, yeah, it makes sense. It's the original ingredient made by God versus, again, synthetic lab-grown oils.
It's the perfect fat as far as I'm concerned. Lard and leaf lard. For your listeners that don't know, leaf lard is the rendered kidney fat from a pig. So I call it tallow adjacent. Tallow is the rendered kidney fat from most commonly a cow, but elk tallow, bison tallow, any ruminant herbivore. If you render their visceral fat, you get tallow. But yeah, leaf lard was actually super prized as a baking fat because the visceral nature of the fat, there's nothing stored in it. It's like a pad. And so it's odorless and colorless and tasteless, and so it doesn't impart a flavor on your pie crust or your biscuits or your whatever.
Should we re-lather real quick?
I'm always up for some lather.
Another sampling.
Well, yeah.
How many times did I come up to?
So most common use for me of our product, and I'll tell you, I should have brought one. I travel with our face food because it's smaller. We've got a skin food that's in a 2 ounce. It's got a gold top, 2 ounce jar. But my most common use of the lather is during my morning shave routine. And so I'll show you since the camera's here. I'll get about that much on my finger. I put it on my hands like this. I've just finished shaving, and I do that. I put it in my hair.
A little animal-based pomade.
And then we're done.
What else do you need?
And you haven't had razor burn in how long?
3 years. I haven't had razor burn
Literally.
in 3 years. I haven't itched. I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. I haven't itched in 3 years. Like, you get a mosquito bite, they itch. Okay, well, the mosquito bite's itching because your skin's swelled up and your skin's habitually dry, right? And so you think about on a microscopic level, these little cracks. These little cracks are appearing on your skin. That's what's itching. I've had chiggers. Now, listen, chiggers itch.
What's chiggers?
Chiggers are like these little microscopic bugs, and they'll burrow into your skin. And they're awful. If you don't have them in Texas, I hope you never get them.
Jeez.
But if you're picking wild blackberries in East Tennessee, you can get your hands on some chiggers. Yeah, they're awful. But I haven't really had an itch. You know, if I get a blemish or if I get a scrape or if my poor kids, Lord, everything that hits their skin, I'm just like, it's like the Windex from my big fat Greek wedding. Like it just goes on everything. But yeah, I haven't had razor burn. So anything burn related is in the acute skincare condition world, right? You got wind burn, razor burn, sunburn, and I'm not saying you're not going to have those things. You know, if you spend too much time in the sun at noon, and I'd love to unpack sort of sunscreens and stuff like that if you want to. But if you get a sunburn, you need to feed your skin, and so rather than putting on some petroleum derivative or seed oil or anything like that, by all means, lather up.
Well, one of the first things I noticed when I tried Farrow, because I had tried a few other tallow skincare products, and I loved them, but to your point, a lot of them, if they're not whipped, it's hard. You kind of got to like dig your finger in there. You really got to rub it in your hands. A lot of them come with a little spatula, so you can dip it out. But the first thing I noticed is when I opened the jar, I was like, this is really creamy. Is this whipped, or is this just how lard is when you turn it into a fat like that?
That's actually a little bit more solid than lard. So our face product actually has a little bit. So again, leaf lard is the tallow equivalent to from pigs, and of course tallow's hard at room temperature. So if you stack leaf lard next to lard, leaf lard's actually got the exact consistency of Crisco. And I think Crisco did that by design because, again, if you were baking in 1905 and you were functioning from I'm an educated baker, there's 100% chance you were baking with leaf lard. And so lard at room temperature is really, I would say, borderline liquid. Which is, our Epidermis product, the tube. This is always fun at conferences because the tube's aluminum, and the minute you hold it in your hand for like 10 seconds, you've just liquefied it because we're warm. And so we have a warning label on the tube like this, buyer beware, like be gentle in pouring this stuff out. But where do we go?
Well, we're just talking about the creaminess of this.
Okay, so what I tried to do there is, I'm in the skincare industry, so in terms of texture and feel, I'm trying to assimilate to an industrial feel. But that, again, even if you left that one in your car this afternoon in Texas, open up the jar, it's going to be liquid.
Oh, dude.
Take it home. I mean, most of our products are really designed for your bathroom countertop. Under 75 degrees, it's going to hold up fine. But yeah, you don't have to go digging with lard. It's creamy by nature, and so that's one thing that does differ from our product versus, you know. And again, I love the tallow brands that are out there are fantastic. So,
what's your stance on sunscreen?
Okay, so
let's get into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a big question to unpack. Sunscreen and humans have only been around together for less than 100 years. What's really changed, and you could make the argument the sunscreen is the main culprit here. What's really changed is our relationship with the sun. You know, again, rewind the clock 100 years. I'm not saying you don't have to be outside at high noon, but if you were outside at high noon, you were covered. You were clothed. It's only in, you know, really I would say the last 60 to 80 years that you see anybody half naked at noon near water. You know, we all go to the beach, but, you know, the false sense of security that we have been handed by this idea of super SPF. I can close my eyes right now and I can smell the Panama Jack tanning oil that my dad would just lather me with. You know, when I was a kid, we'd go down to Mobile and go fishing and all these things. And you had number 6, number 8, number 10, and number 12. So the SPF value of this oil, it was not a cream. It was when you finished putting it on, it was, you were glistening. And you were glistening an hour later, like it was there. But I think the biggest SPF value you could get in 1985, 86 was probably 10 or 12, maybe 15. And so you look at these lines, you know, sunscreen use has gone up. It's almost a hockey stick straight up. SPF value, now you can get 150 SPF value cream. So that's gone up. So has the incidence of cancer. And so I think, you know, vitamin D metabolization is critical. It's not even a vitamin, it's a hormone. And so we go out in the sun and then we block our ability to absorb that sun, and we've lost this respect for, I mean, when I've got my kids, we go to the beach, get up in the morning, we go to the beach, lather them up, and when it gets to be about 10:30, 11 o'clock, if they want to stay out, then we're going to put a hat on, we're going to put a shirt on, you know, we're going to cover up, or let's go inside, let's have a lunch, let's work on a puzzle, and, you know, roll around about 3:30, still plenty of sunshine out. It's back to the beach for some more play. And so our respect for the sun has been misguided by the idea that this, you know, junky cream with an SPF value is somehow protecting us, when in reality it's not protecting us from the real relationship we should have with the sun, which is, it's really hot. Let me get my 10 or 20 minutes of good, solid, high noon exposure, and then it's time to cover back up. And so I think that's done us a real disservice.
Is there any kind of natural SPF you'd like to use if you wanted some extra protection?
Yeah, we're developing one right now, and you'll see some of these. There's some tallow creams. Oh, gosh.
I used this brand called Tallow Twins on Memorial Day. That was pretty good.
Oh, Lord, what's that? I poor sleep for 2 nights in a row. What's the...
Baseball?
No, I'm trying to think of the active ingredient.
Zinc?
Zinc oxide. Thank you. Good Lord. Thank you for telling me my business. So zinc oxide, raspberry seed oil, carrot seed oil. There's a couple of seed oils, but again, I would say the best solution is just awareness. You know, we got all this amazing tactical gear these days, lightweight, dries out quick, you know, big hats. I'll tell you the best thing you can do for vitamin D in your sun is avoid UV sunglasses during the day. You know, we absorb a ton of vitamin D through our eyes. And of course, everybody puts it's like everything else, right? Coming off coffee for a couple days. Well, coming off your glasses for a couple days is it's gonna set you back. It's not gonna feel good, but man, you acclimate. It's great for your eyes as well. But yeah, zinc oxide's the number one. We'll get a product one day. I don't know if we're gonna put an SPF on it. If you're in the skincare industry and publish an SPF on your product, then it's FDA tested. And I'm not against going through that process, but it's expensive and takes 6 to 8 months. And, what do you do if they say no? I don't know. There's some products out there that are sun creams that don't have an SPF on them. We'll have one someday.
You think you could get the consistency of lard to be able to be dispensed out of a spray bottle?
I think a squirt bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lard for sure. Leaf lard and tallow might be a little tough, but I'm all for a lard heavy, lard only product.
Like in an aerosol can?
Yeah.
Oh, you're thinking aerosol.
I didn't know if
That
it was
would be
possible,
legit.
but
It's definitely possible with a pump. I mean, and if you're at the beach, it's liquid anyway.
get that pump.
Yeah, you got to get the pump.
Yeah.
Pig
The
pump?
lard wants you to pump.
Fat pump.
pH?
I'm glad they weren't. I'm glad your listeners weren't in the car with us last night.
No.
Yeah.
And got a little ugly.
We got to,
Sideways.
yeah. Maybe when you launch that product, we can share a little bit more there.
Oh, we'll definitely do an episode when that hits. Stay tuned.
That'll be
listener.
behind a paywall.
It's probably a
have to be.
separate paywall.
Yeah. Maybe 2.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm kind of having this breakthrough moment as we're talking, just thinking about like over the last 100 years, poisoning our food supply, disconnected to our local rancher, wearing sunglasses in the sun, putting plastics all over our body, staring into blue, just sitting under blue light for hours every single day. It's like, this is a really good recipe to be metabolically unhealthy, not happy, overweight, not living a fulfilling life. I don't know. It's like when you're talking about some of these factors and you combine everything together, I'm like, all right, that actually makes sense why we're in the current state of society that we're in.
Well, it came up in the regenerative ag panel. Everybody's asking about farms and this, that, and the other. And it's like everyone here descended from farmers.
Yeah.
Every single one of us. And, I would invite your listener. I was thinking while you were talking, Brett, go watch the movie Tombstone or Wyatt Earp, or if you want to bring it modern day, Yellowstone. But Yellowstone's set in the modern day. Go watch the movie Tombstone and see how those people interacted with the sun. And obviously it's a modern play on a Midwestern or a Western movie, but everybody's, if it's noon and you're walking through Tombstone, you're clothed, got your hat on, nobody's got sunglasses on, and of course this is no air conditioning, no refrigeration, and yet somehow we were able to survive and thrive. And so, yeah, I think we used to be a lot. We're a tough species, thank God. Don't make it so hard on yourself, though.
I mean, it's changing our physiognomy. You can see the introduction of, I think the most obvious to me is people sitting at their computers all day.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's this forward neck tilt that is so obvious. But then you look at some of the research that Weston A. Price did. I mean, he took pictures and documented indigenous tribes who ate their indigenous cuisine versus eating a Western diet. And you see that in their facial structure. I don't even think that like most people today have a jawline that even would resemble their grandparents.
You know what? But Harry, it's all reversible. What's his name? Is it Dr. Mo, the Mo method? You know the dentist out of UK? Dr. Mo, the Mo method. Mewing. Have you looked into that?
Yeah. There's a book called what's it called?
Talking about Breath by James Nestor.
That's another one.
Oh, it's called Jaws, I think. I think it's called Jaws. It's out of Stanford.
So breath's the same way. Like when we breathe through our mouths, we're activating, I forget how many more muscles, but we're breathing up into our chest. That changes you talk about something you do repeatedly over and over again all day, and it literally transforms our physiology. It's the same with the jaw development. Weston A. Price. It was the removal of removal of a couple things, masticating real food, just babies chewing, but also breastfeeding. We used to breastfeed, for 2 or 3 years, and that motion, if you look at the Moo method, that all he's doing is just re-replicating the natural jaw motion for building a nice, wide, strong jaw. So it's all reversible.
This isn't bro science, by the way, for people listening.
It's bro adjacent. We'll call it bro adjacent.
It's bro adjacent for sure.
That should give people hope that a lot of this stuff is reversible, whether it's autoimmune diseases, jaw issues. It's like, yes, modern society has gone backward the last 100 years, but when you start to understand these principles, nature's principles, God's principles, whatever you want to call them, and apply them, dude, you could be 62 years old and radically transform your health. And I don't know how that doesn't give you hope that this is all reversible.
Your story. I mean, look at what you reversed.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, man. It's when I met you, I probably knew you guys for a little while before I really knew your origin story in terms of the ulcerative colitis. But it's like, and I'm convinced that the IBS, UC, GI market from a big pharma standpoint is probably more profitable than the cardiovascular diabetes side of the house.
I think it is.
It's not to the scale that diabetes or cardiovascular disease is, but the numbers are crazy. What were you spending, like 40 or
400K
a year, right?
Because you get 8 infusions a year. So the sheer cost of the biologic drugs versus insulin is far more expensive too. And then I also wonder too how much of it is just programming from these doctors telling you that it's not curable.
Oh, it's terrible.
Like what that does to you. Because healing is just you have to have that mental switch, which you were talking about earlier. You have to believe that the body can be self-healing too. So it doesn't matter what modalities you implement until you have that concrete belief that you can heal. It doesn't matter. But if doctors are constantly telling you, you're going to be on this pill for the rest of your life, you're going to be on that, you're going to be on this. It's like it is a lot of programming, man. The mind is so powerful.
Well, we opened with it. It's like eating healthy is inconvenient. It's expensive. I mean, the programming's been, look at the TV dinners. You know, this is more convenient. This is this is that. Oh, I can't cook. Sure you can.
Sure you can.
Yeah. So no, it's deep. In my day job, I'm sort of over here. We're sort of trying to figure out a couple of widgets to help guide consumers to an Ovadia or a Rivero Health with Sean Baker, some of these practitioners that actually understand that lifestyle can and will. And you know what? What if even if it didn't? Like, have you ever enjoyed eating more than the last couple years and adopting this? I mean, it's like, forget healing. Let's just talk about creating joy. My God, man.
And simplicity. Like, you can layer all this stuff together and make your life very simple from a standpoint of just cooking really high quality foods that doesn't take a whole lot of ingredients or upfront work, and it tastes amazing, and you can do it with friends. It's like, there's a lot there. You're building community. You're getting yourself healthier. What else do you need?
So we sort of joked around about this because I went a little hog wild Friday night, but yeah, the reference is there. So for your listeners, I came into town on Wednesday. You know, heavy travel. I had to drive to Atlanta to fly over here. And so I made the choice on Monday evening. I was like, I knew the VIP dinner was coming. I'm like, I'm just going to fast, right? And the first 24 hours was terrible. But y'all saw me on Thursday and then Friday and Saturday. Man, Thursday and Friday, like mentally, I was as sharp as I've ever been. Of course, I gorged myself Friday night, but the sharpness continued into the talk on Saturday. But the point is, I don't know that I'd ever traveled fasting, but just taking the pressure off of I got to go find something to eat. And of course, I travel with some carnivore bars and just healthy snacks, healthy things to get you through. But man, it was so amazing. And so, if time is money, that I can roll with a 2,500 calorie meal once a day, and I can do that with ground beef and butter and a little pluck seasoning or whatever, throw some salt on top of that stuff. What did I save myself? 2 hours in a day? So there's just so many ways to chop up this way of living. It's very satiating. It's very filling. It saves time. And then, like you said, Brad, if you can roll into that same scenario and also incorporate other people, bring in the community aspect, it's just a formula for the win.
Yeah. To your point, it's actually incredibly convenient because if you're following a carnivore removal diet in general, you're not eating that many different foods. You pretty much know every single night what you're going to be eating, and you get really good at making those dishes too that are super simple. And it's like sometimes I'll use the air fryer, seasoning the steak, and it's ready to go in less than 10 minutes. Or your method where you're just throwing it in the sous vide, letting it cook for a couple hours, and then you sear it really quickly, and you have like the most gorgeous gourmet piece of meat ever that barely took you any time.
Yeah. I have a new method, by the way.
Oh, yeah?
This is just a tease. I have a new method for steaks. It takes a little longer. Well, the sous vide's super convenient because you just put it in and you forget about it. But when it's time to eat, unbag it and you're ready. Dude, the new reverse sear method I got with cast iron is next level. So we're gonna have to plan another trip back to Austin. And
can we get the step by steps, or is this?
I'll give it to your audience right now. Nice big solid cast iron, preferably seasoned in lard, but there's some other oils out there. But get your hands on some lard. Season it, make sure it's nice and greased. You put it in the oven on broil 500 degrees for 20 minutes. You get it hot. Your steak's room temperature, or steaks. I can usually get 3 good steaks in a nice sized cast iron. So the steaks are room temperature. I don't salt or pepper them. I just make sure they're glazed with a little bit of grease. So whether that's butter or avocado oil or something with a high smoke point, butter's probably not your best choice. You bring the skillet out, 1 minute each side on high on the stovetop, so searing it, and you just stick it back in the oven for 5 minutes. Pull it out, perfect medium rare. If the steak's any thicker than about 1.5 inches, then I would add another minute or 2 to your broil. And and here's the magic sauce. So you've cooked the steaks, they come out of the oven, put them on the cutting board to cool, to sort of let them rest, and then just put the skillet on your stovetop and just let it cool off. Cover the handle so you don't grab it because it's muy caliente, but just let it sit there until the next morning, and you got all that rendered beef fat, and you heat that up and you toss in 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 eggs, and cook them in that rendered fat from the steak the night before. But again, perfect medium rare steak, and your active time is only about 7 or 8 minutes because you stick it in the oven, 20 minutes on broil to heat it up, and then when it's go time, it's a minute. As soon as that minute's over, 5 minutes in the oven, 6 if it's really a thick steak, and I've never had the one. And then you can season it. I'll salt and pepper it after the fact. A little pluck every now and then. If I'm feeling spicy, I'll actually take y'all's Oregon blend, and I'll mix that with butter.
Oof.
And then I'll just put a dollop of that on top of the steak right as it's resting, so it'll melt out.
Little compound Oregon butter.
It's delightful.
I've never heard of that before, of actually getting the pan super hot in the oven by itself. So you're saying broil 500 degrees, pan grease with lard, let that pan get in there and cook for 20 minutes.
Yep.
Steak unseasoned, 1 minute each side on high.
Yep.
And then throw it back in there in the cast iron for 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Rest.
So it's all in 7 minutes of active stuff. Turn the broiler on. Broilers, for your listeners that don't know, most conventional oven broilers are set to 500 degrees. Okay. So if you push the broiler button, and don't you'll want to adjust your oven rack before you do this. I like it right in the middle. Not up top. That's too much. Right in the middle of your oven. Turn on broil, stick the skillet in there, and then you've got the steaks laying out. Go vacuum or fold some clothes or blog post or Instagram or whatever. 20 minutes later, come back. You'll want to. I use actually a welding glove if you're not familiar. Those really thick. Pull it out on high gas or conventional electric. Have that eye hot when you bring it out, and 1 minute each side. And when the second minute's over, I will also, let me add this. When I put it in the skillet, I'll let it sit there for about 5 seconds, and then I'll jostle the steak just to make sure it's not sticking. And so, 1 minute each side. It goes right back in the oven for 5 minutes. And then I usually let them rest for about 4 to 5 minutes. Because also, sometimes I'm doing 6 steaks. And so while these 3 are resting, I pull those 3 out. The skillet's still where it needs to be. I'll put the other 3 in. 1 minute, 5 minutes.
Boom.
And by the time those are done, I'm eating the other ones. I live by myself, so I'm cooking 6 steaks is usually a little much, but
I could listen to you talk about cooking steaks for a long time.
That's why
I might have to go back and re-listen to that.
Yeah.
I couldn't even think of a question to ask you. I was just
You're
so
just
zoned out.
salivating.
Yeah.
Just
what
drooling.
question is there to ask after?
I don't know.
After a good cooked steak.
What's your favorite cut?
Oh,
That's
man.
my question.
You
strike me as a picanha guy.
That picanha y'all served up Saturday night was out of this world. I end up eating a strip steak a lot because again I make it convenient. I've got that dialed in. I can change the salt. I can change the seasoning. If someone else is doing it for me, man, I had one Sunday night with Dr. Ovadia, a big old pork or beef rib. Good God, short rib. So a short rib is just a neck down version of a beef rib. I would say if someone else is doing the cooking, it's hard to beat a good short rib or full rib.
Braised?
Yeah. Well, braised or smoked. I mean, I'm agnostic. As long as it's cooked, I'm good.
Little pinch of Baja Gold.
Aren't they amazing?
It's incredible.
Yeah. Shout out Michael's new dad, Michael Salick, the owner. They were not they were here, but he couldn't make it. I think it's the greatest culinary salt on the planet. I mean, I think the Red Mill's good. There's a lot of good salts out there, but just the flavor, it doesn't linger. It's got all those trace minerals in it more than anybody else. That Baja Gold's delightful.
It's not a coincidence that it's really high in minerals and it tastes good. Because people are like, oh, it's high in minerals, but it tastes really good. It's like, no, it tastes good because it's high in minerals.
Funny how that works.
Funny how that works,
yeah.
right?
Pork the other white meat. It's like, no, you want a nutrient dense. I think this question came up on the Regina. Maybe it was the panel, or maybe it was my talk. But someone was like, "How do I find good pork?" And I was like, "If it's white, it ain't good pork." That's a really, it's a really good indicator for your shopper out there. If the meat's white and it's not chicken, not that we should be eating much chicken, but my stomach growled. Maybe we should. The steak talks.
It's all the steak.
We should dig in a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, short rib. That's if I'm cooking a strip and if you're cooking a short rib.
Did you guys get a chance to check out that Jasper booth? They had a air filtration system.
I've seen them, but I didn't get to check out the booth. They're huge.
They are big, and I think that's one of those next frontiers. I mean, water filtration, air filtration. We sit around and talk about what you put in your mouth, but what you put in your lungs, obviously, is just as important. And so, I did not get a chance to really go by and dive deep in it, but I do see a burgeoning sort of air quality world emerging out of this community.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, they look legit. I was talking to them for a bit. It's especially in Austin. There's so much of this like mold. I've been like introduced to this whole air quality stuff through friends. A lot of just environmental toxins and things like that we're just not all that aware of. But I like their booth and pitch on the product.
What was really nice about this weekend is I don't recall a situation where I walked into a room, most commonly like bathrooms or something like that, and was just overwhelmed by either the fake cleanser smell. I don't recall one moment the last 3, 4, 5 days where I've felt overwhelmed by something in the air that's just not natural. which is great.
That's the best.
It is. Cleaning products are awful. And so I don't know if they demanded cleaner cleaning products for this weekend or what, but yeah, air quality is a big deal. You got to be careful because everybody will auger into a rabbit hole that just, you'll end up, what's the term for, is it agoraphobia, where you don't want to leave your house anymore?
Yeah. Yeah, or being like orthorexic or whatever too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and what you're saying is, it's at the end of the day, perfection is not the goal, but it's like, just be mindful of what you put on your skin, the food you put into your body, the products you clean your house with. And if you are mindful of that and you make these good compounding swaps over time, your health is going to skyrocket and you can live a great life.
Well, for air quality, the best thing you can do for air quality is to start by breathing through your nose. Because if you're breathing through your mouth all the time, you're never going to smell when you should maybe leave the room.
Yeah.
And so, it's low-hanging fruit, baby.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk all day. See, man, this has been great. We
I love you
appreciate
guys.
you coming on.
You're the best.
Absolutely. I consider you some of my closest friends, and again, it's good to be on this journey with you guys and so many other folks that were in Austin this weekend, and I very much appreciate and applaud all the hard work you do to promote this community and certainly our brand, and it's been a lot of fun.
It's fun, man. Stay lathered.
Done.
Is that the mantra we're going with? Stay lathered?
You can say whatever you want.
I mean, there's so many.
There's 50.
Lather up.
Rub and scrub.
I'm not going there.
Don't
Eric.
go there.
I'm not.
He's baiting you.
I just need to throw it out there, see if he was just going to go there.
Get buttery.
Grease
Butter
your
up.
gears.
Stay sauced.
Stay sauced.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you.